Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a very warm welcome to Government House, Yarralumla. Dawa Nuna, Dawa Nunawal. I acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that may be gathered here with us this morning or watching online. My name is Paul Singer and I'm the Official Secretary to the Governor-General. I also support the Independent National Emergency Medal Committee, who makes recommendations to the Governor-General for the National Emergency Medal Awards. Before we start the ceremony this morning, I'd like to acknowledge among our distinguished guests, the Honourable Scott Morrison, Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Richard Marles, representing the Leader of the Opposition, Mr Michael Goldman, Charge d'Affaires at the Embassy of the United States of America, Commissioner Rob Rogers, Commissioner of the New South Wales Rural Fire Service, Mr Chris Hardman, Chief Fire Officer of Forest Fire Management Victoria, Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons, Commissioner of Resilience New South Wales and Chair of the National Emergency Medal Committee, and Mr Matthew Jackson, Chief Executive Officer of Parks Victoria. Today we honour and recognise the extraordinary service of a group of dedicated firefighters and first responders who tragically lost their lives during the 2019 and 20 Black Summer bushfires. Their service and ultimate sacrifice will be acknowledged with the award of the National Emergency Medal. The National Emergency Medal was established in 2011 to recognise sustained and significant service during nationally significant emergencies in Australia. Today, the medals are being presented to the families or representatives of those who tragically lost their life in the 2019-20 bushfires. Mr Hardman will accept Matt Kavanagh's medal on behalf of the Kavanagh family, who could not be here today, and Mr Goldman will accept the medals on behalf of the De Morgan, Hudson and Macbeth families, who reside in the United States and due to the pandemic cannot be here with us this morning. For those who are unable to attend in person this morning, today's ceremony is being streamed live on the Governor-General's YouTube channel. Shortly, I'll invite you to stand as Their Excellencies the Governor-General and Mrs Hurley enter the room, and then please remain standing for the singing of the first verse of the Australian National Anthem. The ceremony will then begin and proceed in the order listed in your programs. After the presentations this morning, we'll invite the Prime Minister to speak, followed by Mr Marles. And after the ceremony, Their Excellencies look forward to meeting with all guests while refreshments are being served. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand for the arrival of Their Excellencies the Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia and Mrs Linda Hurley, and for the singing of the Australian National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Government House this morning on a very significant day in our national life, as we recognise those who gave their all for our country during last year's tragic bushfire period. Could I begin by acknowledging that Government House here, the Yarralumla, sits on the land of the Ngunnawal people. I do thank them for looking after this beautiful part of our country for generation after generation and pay respects to their elders past and present. The Official Secretary has acknowledged our official guests. Welcome. We are very pleased that you are here today to share in this important ceremony. I particularly today welcome those who are watching us online, unable to be here today, particularly from the United States, and it is a great honour for us to be joined by you today. Although it's a tragedy that's brought us together today, I hope that today's ceremony conveys to you the gratitude and deep sadness of an entire nation and its feeling for your loss. The 2019 bushfires will long be seared in our nation's memory. Linda and I continue to visit communities adversely impacted by that bushfire period. On recent visits to East Gippsland, the south coast of New South Wales, and the Snowy Mountains, we've seen the signs of regrowth and rebuilding, slow at times, but progressing no less. The clearing of destroyed properties and trees, new construction, and the bushland regenerating. The visible scars of the devastation of the fires are still there, but the healing will take time. That's the physical recovery. The emotional scars are hidden from view. They too may be healing, but each person's journey is unique and certainly progress is not linear. As Linda and I have sat with people and listened to their stories, we realise that there isn't a quick answer or a solution to offer. We can be there, we can listen, offer a reassurance or a virtual hug. Today's ceremony has a similar intent. It's intended to convey to you that our entire nation is grateful for your loved one's service, that the entire nation remembers their sacrifice, that our hearts break for your loss, and that while we can never fully understand the scale of your grief, you remain constantly in our thoughts. I want to speak directly to the families and loved ones of the late Captain Ian Macbeth, the late First Officer Paul Hudson, and the late Flight Engineer Rick De Morgan Jr., watching today's ceremony from the United States. When some of us met here last year, I said that all of Australia is grateful for your loved one's sacrifice. While we are a long way away from each other today, in terms of distance, know that you'll forever be held in a very close place in our nation. During today's ceremony, I will present the insignia of the National Emergency Medal to the loved ones or representatives of those who lost their lives serving our community during the 2019-20 bushfires. The medal is awarded to persons who rendered sustained or significant service during nationally significant emergencies in Australia. In coming months, many who served during the devastating fires will be recognised with the National Emergency Medal. It will become a very visible reminder of the devastation of the fires and the scale of our response. Those who wear it will identify with each other for having been there and be identified by grateful communities for what they did. And it is fitting today, at this first presentation of this medal for the 2019-20 bushfires, we gather to recognise those who made the ultimate sacrifice. We honour their bravery and will always remember their service. In a period of intense danger, they chose to serve. They put themselves in harm's way to help others. Not for recognition, not for a medal, because they were good people, brave people, and selfless people. And they represented the very best of us. While these are just words, I can assure you they are not empty platitudes. Know that countless Australians feel the same way. I hope that respect is of comfort to you. Be proud of your loved one's service and know that their sacrifice will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, to be honoured with the insignia of the National Emergency Medal, the late firefighter Colin Burns, to be accepted by his partner, Miss Estrelita Kabakungan. Firefighter Burns had a distinguished service history with the New South Wales Rural Fire Service. He was a long-serving member of the Ballarat Brigade, New South Wales Far South Coast, initially volunteering there in the late 1980s. During the 2019-20 bushfire emergency, he was driving to the Ballarat fire shed to help protect residents who had sought shelter from the out-of-control Badger fire when his vehicle rolled and, sadly, he lost his life. We recognise and highly commend firefighter Burns for his dedication to the safety of our community. Miss Estrelita Kabakungan accepts the insignia of the National Emergency Medal on behalf of firefighter Colin Burns. The late firefighter Matthew Kavanagh, to be accepted by Mr. Chris Hardman, Chief Fire Officer, Forest Fire Management Victoria. Firefighter Kavanagh was a Forest Fire Management Victoria employee who provided 10 years of dedicated service, including at the 2009 Black Saturday bushfires. He'd spent significant time on duty over the course of the devastating 2019-20 bushfire season. On 3rd of January 2020, firefighter Kavanagh and her colleagues spent the morning attending campsites in the Big River State Forest, advising campers to leave the area and extinguishing unattended campfires. Returning to Alexandra on the Goulburn Valley Highway, their vehicle was hit by another vehicle and, sadly, firefighter Kavanagh lost his life. We owe firefighter Kavanagh a debt of gratitude for his service and sacrifice, and we honour him today. Mr. Chris Hardman accepts the insignia of the National Emergency Medal on behalf of firefighter Matthew Kavanagh. The late Deputy Captain Jeffrey Keaton, to be accepted by his son, Harvey Keaton, accompanied by Mr. Philip Keaton. The late firefighter Andrew O'Dwyer, to be accepted by his daughter, Charlotte O'Dwyer, accompanied by Mrs. Melissa O'Dwyer. In the late evening of the 19th of December 2019, both Deputy Captain Keaton and firefighter O'Dwyer were responding to the Green Wattle Creek blaze near Buxton, southwest of Sydney. Together with 3 other crew members from the Horsley Park Brigade, they were travelling to the assistance of landowners who were attempting to protect their homes when their firefighting vehicle was struck by a recently burnt out tree on the roadside. As a result of this impact, their vehicle left the road and, sadly, Deputy Captain Keaton and firefighter O'Dwyer lost their lives in the accident. Both men had served in the New South Wales Rural Fire Service with distinction for over 13 years. We honour Deputy Captain Keaton and firefighter O'Dwyer for their valiant efforts to protect and serve their community. Harvey Keaton, accompanied by Mr. Philip Keaton, accepts the insignia of the National Emergency Medal on behalf of Deputy Captain Jeffrey Keaton. Charlotte O'Dwyer, accompanied by Mrs. Melissa O'Dwyer, accepts the insignia of the National Emergency Medal on behalf of firefighter Andrew O'Dwyer. The late firefighter Samuel McPaul, to be accepted by his wife, Mrs. Megan McPaul, accompanied by their son, Angus McPaul. Firefighter McPaul served the New South Wales Rural Fire Service with dedication since joining the service in 2016. On 30th December 2019, as a member of the Morven Brigade, he and 2 other firefighters teamed up to help protect the communities of Jingellic and Tumelno. The 3 crew responded to a fire at Lightwood property. After moving trapped livestock to safety, the tanker they in was exposed to a fire tornado, which caused their firefighting vehicle to overturn, resulting in firefighter McPaul losing his life. We are indebted to firefighter McPaul for his courage, professionalism and sacrifice. Mrs. Megan McPaul accepts the insignia of the National Emergency Medal on behalf of firefighter Samuel McPaul, accompanied by their son, Angus. The late Mr. David Moresi, to be accepted by his son, Luke Moresi. Mr. Moresi was serving as a contractor for Forest Fire Management Victoria in East Gippsland during the 2019 fires. On the 30th November 2019, he was working with colleagues to build critical containment lines for a section of the fire burning Mount Jalantimpi. During his shift, the vehicle was operating, rolled over, and sadly, he lost his life. He had a particular connection with the bush and encouraged many people to experience Australia's natural environment. He was also an educator and supported the building of schools in developing countries. We are inspired and humbled by Mr. Moresi's selfless commitment to others. Mr. Luke Moresi accepts the insignia of the National Emergency Medal on behalf of Mr. David Moresi. The late firefighter William Slade, to be accepted by his son, Mr. Ethan Slade. Firefighter Slade was a veteran volunteer with Forest Fire Management Victoria, serving with them for over 40 years. During his career, he attended a number of major fire campaigns, including the Ash Wednesday bushfires in 1983. He was also passionate about mentoring younger firefighters. On the 11th of January 2020, he was working on a fire ground at Anglers Rest, north of Omeo, when he was struck by a falling tree and sadly lost his life. We commend firefighter Slade for his service over many years, particularly in protecting us during last year's devastating fire event. Mr. Ethan Slade accepts the insignia of the National Emergency Medal on behalf of firefighter William Slade. the late Captain Ian Macbeth, the late First Officer Paul Hudson, and the late Flight Engineer Rick De Morgan Jr., to be accepted on behalf of their families by Mr. Michael Goldman, Chargé d'Affaires, Embassy of the United States of America. On the 23rd of January 2020, Mr. Macbeth, Mr. Hudson, and Mr. De Morgan were crewing a C-130 air tanker. They had conducted vital fire control operations on the Good fire that was burning out of control near Cooma in the Snowy Mountains. During difficult weather conditions, they completed a drop of fire retardant liquid to protect property at Peakview when an accident occurred that tragically took their lives and destroyed their plane. All three were US military veterans and experienced airmen. They were part of an international contingent of firefighters sent to New South Wales to assist during our devastating bushfire season. On behalf of all Australians, we honour Captain Macbeth, First Officer Hudson, and Flight Engineer De Morgan for their service and for their contribution to our community in a country far from their own. Mr. Michael Goldman accepts the insignias of the National Emergency Medal on behalf of the late Captain Ian Macbeth, the late First Officer Mr. Paul Hudson, and the late Flight Engineer Rick De Morgan Jr. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the presentations this morning, and I now invite the Prime Minister to speak.
Well, thank you very much and good morning. Can I also begin today by acknowledging the Ngunnawal people, their elders past, present and future. Can I also commence today by acknowledging all those who've served our country. Today in particular, we acknowledge the service of a very special band. But we also acknowledge the service of those to our country over a very long time, particularly from our Defence Forces. Those in particular who also served during the time of these terrible disasters and the Black Summer fires. Friends, I can say that to so many of you, having spent time with you over the course of these years. We have grieved, you have grieved, and that grief continues. We remember again today, and we will keep remembering. It's been a rocky path of grief and remembrance, but today is about honour. Today we lift our eyes, we look up, and we look up to them for their bravery, their selflessness, and their courage. Those who didn't leave it to others, those who took their responsibility and played their part in good cheer, in good humour, in good faith, and in good spirit. Their morality was expressed through what was a deep well they drew from in selflessness. Deeds of fathers, brothers, mates, spouses, sons. They're no longer with us, but they still do strengthen us, enabling us to play our part and make the difference that we can now make, a difference that they made. Their names, particularly today, Your Excellency, and Mrs. Hurley, you have honoured today. Colin Burns, Matt Kavanagh, Jeffrey Keaton, Samuel McPaul, David Moresi, Andrew O'Dwyer, William Slade, and of course our American friends, who are now our family also. Rick De Morgan Jr., Paul Hudson, Ian Macbeth, who served beneath our flag on this occasion, but travel home under theirs. They're all part of our story, beneath our Southern Cross. And today we have honoured them, the first, under this National Emergency Medal for those Black Summer fires. A medal can't encapsulate the beautiful spirit of human beings, but in them we do place our heartfelt respect and our love and our profound gratitude as a nation. The medals are engraved with wattles, a soft but tough flower whose resilience represents the spirit of the Australian people. And they are a tribute to the sacrifices made for our communities and our country. They do speak to selflessness and courage that 10 special firefighters showed when the largest bushfires in our nation's history were raging. Their service, their commitment, their character was as fierce as the fires they ran to meet. And though those fires have passed and they are now lost to us, their character endures. A time of fear and foreboding was a forerunner, though, to the regeneration that now takes place. The signs of rejuvenation that we see back in the life of our land, but in particular here today, as we shared with Charlotte and Harvey and Angus, and as we've seen them grow, we take heart, I think, from that rejuvenation of spirit, of land, of family. We gather here at Yarralumla, the land of the Ngunnawal. Yarralumla means echo, and today we draw strength from the memory of those whose selflessness and courage echo amongst us today. The psalmist has written, "Their glory shall not be blotted out. Their seed shall remain forever." Australia honours those that we have lost. We pay tribute. As Shane Fitzsimmons, who was here with us today, who led New South Wales brigades so ably during the course of those fires and on so many other occasions, in the face of adversity and so much tragedy, the goodwill of Australia shone through. Out of the ashes of this tragedy, that will be our most enduring memory, that when the Black Summer fires were scorching our land and breaking our hearts, we indeed did rally together, and that is why we honour today. Can I thank you all for the great strength that you've given our nation in the way that you have remembered and honoured those who have fallen. Can I thank you personally, to those who I've got to know well, for the great friendship and extension of encouragement that you've paid to me over these difficult years for our country. There's not a day that goes past that when we encounter the challenges we do today as a nation, that I don't think of these 10 firefighters and I don't think of their courage, and it inspires, I think, all Australians to now and go and be their best. Thank you for their service.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I now invite the Honourable Richard Marles to speak, representing the Leader of the Opposition.
I too would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Can I acknowledge Governor-General Mrs Hurley, acknowledge the Prime Minister, and particularly acknowledge the family and friends of the extraordinary Australians who we are recognising today. The National Emergency Medal was first struck in the aftermath of the 2009 Black Saturday bushfires. I remember that day vividly, the heat of it, as I do Ash Wednesday, the smoke filling the house in which I lived in Geelong. Emergencies, floods, cyclones, natural disasters, but particularly fires, have been a part of life on this continent forever. They sear our consciousness, they mark time, they go to the heart of our culture. But even in the context of that history, the Black Summer bushfires were of a different order of magnitude. In 2009, about 500,000 hectares were burnt in the Black Saturday bushfires. In the Black Summer bushfires of 16 months ago, by various estimates, it was somewhere between 24 and 40 million hectares. It says something about the scale of the event. And with 16 months to reflect on the extraordinary phenomenon that occurred, there are some aspects of it which really loom large. Most particularly was the scale of the lives lost, and to put it perhaps differently, the comparative size of the lives saved. Tragically, 33 people lost their lives in the Black Summer bushfires. But that compared to 173 people who lost their lives on Black Saturday. And it begs a question. How is it that a fire that was 50 times as large saw a loss of life only 1/5 as big? The answer to that question is in this room. Shane Fitzsimmons said to me that in terms of the National Emergency Medal, it's estimated that 130,000 Australians will be eligible for this in terms of the contribution that they made in fighting the Black Summer bushfires. That is extraordinary. And it speaks to the fact that our ability to deal with fires, to reduce the loss of life, has grown significantly. But there is in the midst of it also another tragic statistic. 9 firefighters who we acknowledge today lost their lives, much more than the loss of life on Black Saturday, much more. And those 9 people, in the midst of incredible danger, ran toward it, not from it, and put their lives on the line, as did all those who volunteered during the Black Summer bushfires. Because of what they did, there must be hundreds of Australians now who are living their lives, who are contributing to our country, who are loving their loved ones, but wouldn't be but for the effort of your loved ones. And it's that sacrifice that we acknowledge today. At the end of the US Civil War, America's greatest president wrote a very famous letter to a Mrs. Bixby who lost 5 sons during the Civil War. His words speak to the anguish of sacrifice, but the pride that goes with it. And in a sense, to me, it seems those words are very apt today, particularly given that 3 of the 9 who lost their lives were from the United States, and that we have our friends, our family from the United States who are watching today. Abraham Lincoln said this, "I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. But I cannot refrain from tendering to you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the Republic they died to save. Today our nation gives you our thanks, that in the anguish of your bereavement, that you know that in the sacrifice of your loved ones and of your friends, there will always be a deep and solemn pride."
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that concludes the formal presentations this morning. Now I invite you to join with Her Excellencies in the dining room and out on the Lakeside Terrace, where morning tea will be served. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand for the departure of Her Excellencies, the Governor-General and Mrs. Hurley. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen, and a good morning.